Wow.
Yeah. But again, it was, I mean, you come in one way and you leave the other way, but there's lookouts at both. I mean, they pretty much know if you're going to be in there, they know you're there.
Yeah.
And so it turns out that none of those things were working. None of the standard ways of doing cop work was working because, as I would find years down the road, they had a cop that was actually feeding information to the cats down there too. So, but what it caused me to do was, man, I love to do narc work, and it was just an exciting thing. I saw and have seen some of the bad issues, the violence that was going on down there, and the kids that couldn't walk to school. It was good people that were in that neighborhood that were held hostage by the gang violence, essentially. You didn't have kids out playing ball and stuff like they would in a normal hood. So for their sake, you're trying to figure out what can we do, because these are poor families that can't just move. People tend to say, well, man, it's really violent, man. You just need to get up and move. You shouldn't be living there. Well, that's easier said than done. Some of these people lived there for generations.
Right.
So I sat down with an informant one time. We were sipping some whiskey that I thought was good. It was cheap whiskey, actually, but at the time I thought it was good. And I presented I proposed what I wanted to do to him, just to kind of get some vibes off of him before I pitched it to my boss. And I said, man, that really the way to do this is I need to go in and blow this thing up from the inside. We're doing all these tactics and all these things. Everybody knows what they are up front, but if I can get in there, work undercover, work my way to the top, and we'll blow it up from the inside.
When you make these suggestions, are you a veteran cop?
Yeah, I was a veteran cop, but I'd been there at that time. I came on in 96, 97, so yeah, I've been there 7-8 years.
Okay.
So yeah, a little bit, but he laughed his ass off.
I was just about to say, yeah,
The
yeah.
informant laugh.
Dude, I usually say, I suggested it, and then when he finally quit laughing, I was like, man, I'm serious. And
Yeah, because I'm saying this is kind of unheard of in Fort Worth Police Department's history. So here you come along, you hadn't even been on the force 10 years.
Yeah.
And you say, let's go down here and let's, because this is my family, that's my family's area.
Yeah.
Most of the people that you encountered down there was my relatives. That's a generational thing, right? So the Douglases was down there.
Right.
So here you come along as a white cop. You make a suggestion to do something that's unorthodox, for one, with no support, just you by yourself.
Right.
How did he process that at first, after he stopped laughing?
After he stopped laughing, he said, hey, man, that's a horrible idea. When we going? Because he's a nut. You got to understand, if you're going to be a CI, your society that's a little nuts, right? But pitching the same thing to my boss was the same thing, because he knew how outrageous it was, but also had some responsibility over me and didn't want. But he knew I was determined to do good. He knew I was doing it for the right reasons. And I know the Douglas family was going to be good people in the Douglas family, but they were running a lot of the crime, right? I mean, the Douglas family controlled the crime there. The place was divided in two halves, and it was very organized down there. And there were other families that are down there. Some were problematic, but again, others were just trying to make it.
There was two generations that were just born into it, that knew nothing other than this.
Yeah.
And there was two generations that had never made it outside of that. So,
right. And that's part of the problem that we learned down the road too. Yeah. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. So we'll get to that. So because this is our generation. If people really read the book and look at the story, the Fishbowl story, it's a modern day Donnie Brasco, but just two sides of the coin.
Yeah.
The one side is the cop making the arrest and bringing down, this big drug organization, mafia family. But then there's a flip side, and then that's where you come in. You write about the flip side.
Yeah.
The tragedies that's associated with it.
Yeah, I mean the book is not a Batman story, and I didn't write the book. Initially, I didn't want to write the book. So I get through this. I essentially go in. I work a deep cover operation, which is kind of unheard of since the 70s too. Except it's only because my boss just covered my butt. But I went down there again with no cover. I would call compadre and a marked unit just to be a couple of blocks away and keep an open phone line with them. So I said, man, if I say such and such, then I need you to basically drive through the front door because there's no one else here. The standard way of doing stuff, you call and get a narc team together with a bunch of dudes parked, half a block away in some unmarked Ford Explorer with no tent. It just doesn't work well. You know what I mean? So, so I really just was what we consider off the books, and my boss just really covered for me. But once we got done, there was a lot more to the story, obviously. But we rounded up 51 people at the end of this thing, and many of which I considered friends after 2 years.
I was just about to say, over what time span?
Yeah, 18 months. It was technically 18 months, and we did another 6 to 10 months in trials and stuff. Not everybody went to trial, but the ones that did, obviously, was federal trials.
So you was T for 18 months?
Yeah.
Well,
No
hold on.
breaks,
let me back up
no
for a
nothing.
minute because
Yeah,
this is an primary black plate. Like,
ain't no primary all.
so if everybody black, how are? Because I missed something, right? If everybody is black, how are you able to infiltrate inside of an organization to where you able to, round up 51 people?
And he real
Yeah.
gangsters.
That's what I'm saying.
These real gangsters.
Yeah, they're Crips. So look, despite the fact that I know I looked the part to start with, I decided to go in as T, who was a big time dope dealer whose source was busted by the feds.
Okay.
What side of town were you supposed to be from?
I was from the west side of town, and I was moving over to the southeast side of town. So essentially, I came in as an opportunity, not a competitor. And I just told myself internally, I was like, man, if I had just this much sociopath in me, how would I do this? If I really just decided, me, Tegan, right now, if I really wanted to start a dope game, how would I do it? Where would I go? How would I start pulling it off? So most of my persona was just me, except that I was, doing illicit work.
But listen, I'm looking at you now. You ain't hip. You ain't got the kind of cool and street swag.
Man, you don't even know me, man.
So what's your uniform? Because everybody got to have a uniform. So
Yeah.
what did you show up dressed as?
I just wore baggy clothes and a ball cap, which I know is kind of typical of a cop too. But again, I was myself.
Man, I would be like,
But everyone was. They were.
no way in the world.
They were.
Bro.
Here's how it works. So I'll give you the tip, because I come in and I pull down to the blocks, right? And I say, hey man, I'll pull in with you. You riding in the passenger seat, and somebody will come up and they'll be giving me the 20 questions, whatever, and I'm blowing them off. I'm saying, look, I don't need 20 questions from you. We're here to spend some money. I'm helping my boy get some hustle. And so this is all his deal.